All right. Very good morning, students. Let's start with today's topic. But before going to that particular topic, we will have. I will just recapitulate what we have studied in our previous topic. Okay. In our previous topic, we have just completed about acids and base. We have totally finished the topic acid and base. So now the chapter name was acid, base, and salt. So now we are just left with our third topic that is known as the salts. Since acid and base are completed, we are just left with the topic salts. So what is actually a salt wants to define us, what it wants to convey to us, we will see that, and we will see the different type of salts. We have so many example of salts which are very important in our daily life. What is their importance, how they can be prepared, and what are their properties. These three things for every salt we will see. Okay, so let's start what actually a salt wants to define us. So basically, if I'm talking about salts, a salt is something which is neutral, So if I'm talking about the neutrality, you must tell me the pH value. I have just given you the brief and the detailed discussion about the pH value in our last class, that a salt must have pH value equal to 7. Only then we can say that yes, this is our pure neutral salt. Okay, so if I'm talking about a salt, it must have the pH value equal to 7, then it is our pure neutral salt. But is it true for all the salts? No, definitely not. See class, we know very well that our salt has been prepared only when we are reacting our acid as well as base. Suppose I'm talking about the HCl and the NaOH. What would happen? The NaCl would be formed as the salt and the water would be separated out. Okay. So this NaCl, which is formed with the help of strong acid, which is the HCl, and the strong base, which is the NaOH, when they react completely to each other, what would happen? The water would be released and the salt, that is sodium chloride, would be formed with pH equal to 7. That is our first point. But what would happen if we are going to react a strong acid with a weak base? That means it is not completely neutralized. Okay, it is not completely neutralized. Only then we can say that there is a formation of salt. So I would say, if the strong acid and the weak base are reacted to each other, the pH value must be less than 7. The pH value must be less than 7. Same as it is if I'm talking about weak acid, but the strong base, the pH value must be greater than 7. Okay, because they are not completely neutralized. They haven't given the exact we can say opponent, the strong opponent which can neutralize it. So that's why these are the formation of our salt on the basis of pH. Okay, now let's start with a very basic salt, which is known as the common salt, which we use in our kitchen, in our tables, that is known as sodium chloride. Okay, let's begin this. So let's start with our common salt and how the common salt can be used to make different type of salts. We will see that. So let's begin. The first one is my common salt, that is sodium chloride. I have already told you that sodium chloride is formed when strong acid and strong base are getting reacted to each other. That is that is hydrochloric acid and the NaOH. Both are the strong base. Now the question arises here, what would happen if we are going to want to separate it? Like what is its actual source? इसका मेन सोर्स क्या है जहां से हम अपने कॉमन सोल्ट को ले सकते हैं? And that is the sea water. We know very well that sea water is something which is made up of so many different composition, है ना? We have studied that the sea water is our heterogeneous mixture. In 9th class, we have studied. And the sea water contains mineral as well as salt. Whenever we want to extract the common salt from sea water, what would happen? We would first dry up the water, and after that, what would we left? We would left with the common salt. Okay, so this was something about common salt. Now this common salt is used as a raw material. This is used as a raw material for formation of our different salts. Okay, so let's begin with our first salt, that is known as sodium hydroxide. Okay, now we will say that sodium hydroxide seems to be a strong base. So how can we say it's salt? It's definitely not a salt, but we will see how with the help of sodium chloride, we can make sodium hydroxide and what are its physical purposes to us. Okay, so let's begin. Let's begin with the formation of NaOH, how NaOH is used to make NaCl. Is used to make from the NaCl. Okay. Now, in the chemistry language, sodium chloride is known as brine solution. Sodium chloride is known as brine solution. When this brine solution is heated, we would get the sodium hydroxide by the process of chlor-alkali process. And why are we saying chlor-alkali? Because it is made up of two different words. The chlor means the chlorine and the alkali means the base. We know NaOH is our strong base. Okay, so with the help of sodium chloride, we would make our chlorine and base. How can we make? Let's see. Whenever we just start to heat our sodium chloride, suppose I'm saying that I'm starting to heat my sodium chloride with water, it would make chlorine plus NaOH. I think that is all. Yes, it's completed. So what we have seen that whenever we are heating with our brine solution, it would be separated out in two different forms, the anode as well as the cathode. You have studied that anode is known as something, the diode, which has the negative charge. And if I'm talking about the cathode, which is something which has the positive charge. Okay. Now, on the basis of anode and cathode, we can say that on anode, the chlorine gas would be passed, and on cathode, the H2 gas would be passed. And meanwhile, the sodium chloride is getting reacted, it would make sodium hydroxide. Okay, so this is how a common salt can be used to make sodium hydroxide. This is something very important topic. And in this, we have just studied that yes, sodium chloride is not only a common salt, it can also be used as a chemical, which can be used to make our different type of chemicals. Okay, so this was all. Now we will start with our second important topic, second important compound, that is known as bleaching powder. So let's begin what bleaching powder wants to describe to us. Now, I think hopefully you have heard about the bleaching powder, what bleaching powder wants to say to us. Have you heard about the name of bleaching powder? Bleaching powder is something which is used to remove, we can say, impurity from water, first thing. Second, it is used to make something bleached, or we can say to give color to some compound with the help of bleaching powder. Now, what is the composition of bleaching powder? How bleaching powder is prepared? Let's see this particular topic. We are just having our calcium hydroxide on the basis of calcium hydroxide, and we are just reacting it with chlorine. What would happen? We would get calcium oxychloride. Okay, and this calcium oxychloride is known as bleaching powder. All right, so we can say whenever we are reacting a strong base, that is calcium hydroxide, with chlorine gas, what would we get? We would get calcium oxychloride. Okay, and this calcium oxychloride is known as bleaching powder, which can be used in textile industry to give color to clothes or something, or it can be used as an oxidizing agent. It can be used to remove impurities from water. Now let's start with our third topic, that is baking soda. But in this topic, in today's class, we have just different type of compounds like bleaching powder, washing soda, baking soda, and so on. These all are something which you use in your daily life, which you hear the common name in your daily life. And in this class, we are going to study what actually this common name have the chemical composition. Okay, so आज की class जो है, it just goes to the topic with the chemical name of these common compounds और उनकी uses क्या है and how they are prepared. Okay, so in this class we will just see the different type of compounds and how they are prepared. So let's move with our third topic, the baking soda. You must have heard about the baking soda, the baking powder, to make, you know, tasty crispy things like pakoras, we can say, like french fries, we can say, or if I'm going to talking about the pizza, we are going to have some baking powder to make it bake. Okay, so baking is something which can be used in the kitchen, which is the main ingredient for our kitchen. What is its chemical composition and how it can be prepared? Let's start. Now, the baking soda has the formula sodium bicarbonate, or we can say sodium hydrogen carbonate. Sodium hydrogen carbonate. Now, the same question, how sodium hydrogen carbonate is prepared? See, अभी I have told you कि हमारा जो sodium chloride है, हमारा जो brine solution है, it is a kind of raw material for all the salt. जैसे कि हमने NaOH prepare किया था, and NaOH के साथ we have released some chlorine gas. That chlorine gas was getting reacted with calcium hydroxide to make bleaching powder. Okay, now same as it is, जो baking soda है उसका raw salt है हमारे पास sodium chloride, and we are reacting with, because we need hydrogen, we need carbonate, we need some methane, methane gas and some carbon dioxide gas to have some hydrogen carbonate. Okay, and what would we get? We would get NH4Cl, that is a salt, plus sodium hydrogen carbonate. Okay, there's something missed. I think there should be water also. Only then we will get 3 oxygen now. So basically, with the help of sodium chloride, what's happening to us, if we are going to react our common salt with carbon dioxide gas as well as ammonia gas as well as high water, we would get our sodium bicarbonate, which is known as baking soda. Now, with the help of this baking soda, we can easily make baking powder and so on. But the concept is what would happen if we heat our sodium hydrogen carbonate. अगर हम इसको heat करेंगे तो क्या होगा? What would be its next chemical property? So simple this one is, whenever we heat our sodium hydrogen carbonate, what would happen? If we heat our sodium hydrogen carbonate, it would make sodium carbonate and H2 gas would be released. I'm just putting this triangle, which triangle represents the heating sign. Whenever I'm heating my sodium hydrogen carbonate, it would convert it into sodium carbonate plus H2. And this sodium we use to make our you have understood सारे के सारे जो topics हैं, they are interconverted to each other. First we have our common salt, उसके साथ हमने NaOH prepare किया और chlorine gas. Type of salt I have made my hydrogen carbonate, which is known as baking soda. And from this sodium hydrogen carbonate, I am going to make my washing soda. है ना? So these all topics are just interconnected to each other. So keep that in your mind. Okay. So let's begin with our next topic, washing soda. But let me give you 2-3 examples of the baking soda uses. I have already told you that baking soda to make pizzas and so on. Rather than that, sodium hydrogen carbonate is also used in fire extinguisher to lower down the flame, to lower down the fire. Sodium bicarbonate is also used. Okay. Now we will start with our next topic, that is washing soda. I have already told you that with the help of sodium chloride, on reacting this, we will get sodium hydrogen carbonate, and on reacting with sodium hydrogen carbonate, we will get sodium carbonate. So this sodium carbonate is something which is known as washing soda. Washing soda. The sodium carbonate with 10 moles of water, it would give us sodium carbonate into 10 moles of water, known as washing soda. Okay, so what are the basic composition of washing soda is sodium carbonate, but we will reacting it with 10 moles of water, and this 10 moles of water which are I'm representing in the dot, this is known as water of crystallization. We will see about this. Okay, but now the question arises, is washing soda wet in nature? Because it has 10 moles of water, so that means, is it wet in nature? Whenever we pick them, it seems to be wet, it seems to be having some moisture in it? No, this is not so. So why we have taken these 10 moles of water? Why we have said that we are getting reacted the 10 moles of water? We will see this in another topic, but now let me explain some uses of washing soda. Washing soda is used in glass, soap, and paper industries, and it is used for domestic purpose. Quite obviously, I have told is washing soda, so it is used as a cleansing agent, and it is also used for removing permanent hardness of water. This is super important topic for removing hardness of water. Now you would ask me, ma'am, what is hardness of water? But I think in 9th class, you have somewhat have an idea about the hardness, but let me explain. And this you will see in the same class, but in the higher chapters. Hardness means there are some impurities of carbonate, hydrogen carbonate, of calcium and magnesium, which would make the water hard. Okay, on the basis of which, if we are going to wash our clothes, it would not give any leather. Okay, this is the main drawback of hard water. So we will use washing soda to remove the hardness. Okay, this is a brief idea about hardness. Now let's begin with our topic about these 10 moles of water. This is known as salt. This is known as water of crystallization. Water of crystallization is basically a fixed number of water molecules which are present in formula of a salt. I would say which are present in salt formula. I have said this is the fixed. Yani if I'm talking about the washing soda, there must be 10 moles of water. अगर मैं sodium carbonate के साथ 8 moles of water डाल दूं, 7 moles of water डाल दूं, that is not washing soda. If I'm putting only 10 moles of water, only then I can say this is our washing soda. Okay, so the point here is there must be a fixed number of molecules, and this fixed number of molecule is through experiment, through our chemical reaction. We have seen through chemical reaction and experiment that if we're having 10 moles of water, only then our washing soda will be prepared. Okay, so this is fixed, which you have to remember. Now let's begin with our topic, Some another example with our water of crystallization. Let's have example of copper sulfate. Copper sulfate into 5 moles of water known as pentahydrate salt. Whenever I would remove the copper sulfate and I would heat it, what would happen? The 5 moles of water would be released as a vapor whenever I heat it. So we are left with copper sulfate. This copper sulfate is colorless in nature. And when we react it with 5 moles of water, it would become copper sulfate into 5 moles of water, and this is blue in nature. So I can say this water of crystallization not give us the exact formula, but also it give color to that compound. For example, I'm talking about copper sulfate. If I'm removing water from it, it is colorless. If I'm providing water to it, it is colored in nature. It is blue in nature. Okay. So these compounds are not wet actually. These are dry, but water of crystallization is fixed. That must have a compound contained. Only then we can say, yes, this is our compound. Okay. I hope you're getting this particular topic. Now let's move with 2 more topics. These are plaster of Paris. Okay, have you heard about plaster of Paris? What plaster of Paris means? Plaster of Paris is basically something which is named as POP. I hope you have heard the name of POP, plaster of Paris. It is something which is used in the making of roofs and walls. In the roofs, we use some plaster of Paris. Rather than that, if anyone, God forbid, if anyone get fracture in their leg or arms, doctor fix it with the plaster, है ना? And that plaster is known as the plaster of Paris. Okay. तो जो डॉक्टर फ्रैक्चर्स को बोन्स की फ्रैक्चर को फिक्स करते हैं, that is fixed with the help of plaster. And that plaster is nothing else but this is plaster of Paris. So how the plaster of Paris is made? It is made by heating the gypsum. This is known as gypsum with calcium sulfate into 2 moles of water. Now you would get why are we using calcium sulfate. You know very well that our bones are made up of calcium. And to give them support, we need something which is already made up of calcium. Okay, so from gypsum, that is calcium sulfate into 2 moles of water, whenever we heat it, what would happen? We would get calcium sulfate into half mole of water. This calcium sulfate with half mole of water is known as plaster of Paris. Am I clear, bache? The calcium sulfate with half mole of water, this is known as plaster of Paris. And this is fixed that only if we are having half mole, it would get the plaster of Paris. Otherwise, it is not a plaster of Paris. Okay. So what would happen if we are just reversing back? That means I'm just adding some water. It would make the gypsum again. So मेरा कहने का मतलब ये है बच्चे कि जो water of crystallization है ये fixed है plus it is reversible reaction. Whenever we want, we just heat it and we can remove the water from it. And whenever we want, we can just provide some water to it and it would get the fixed number of composition of water and it would again get back to its original position. Okay, so this is the benefit of water of crystallization. All right, so what we have studied today, we have studied different compounds like washing soda, bleaching powder, how can we prepare sodium hydroxide and plaster of Paris. And main importantly, we have studied about water of crystallization. Okay, so if I just leave the plaster of Paris, all those compounds we have studied in which sodium chloride, that is the brine solution, was a raw material. Our sodium chloride was something which is used as a raw material for all the compounds. Okay, so keep that in your mind. Now we will see some in-text questions, and then definitely if you have any kind of doubt or query, we will see them. Okay, so let's have some questions in your in-text book. We have questions on our page number 33. What is the common name of compound calcium oxychloride? What is the common name of compound calcium oxychloride? I have just told you that calcium oxychloride is prepared by calcium hydroxide and chlorine gas, and it is known as bleaching powder. It is known as bleaching. Super important topic, super important questions, which are very important for your board exam also. Bleaching powder is something which can be used for bleaching our bleaching powder, and rather than that, it has also an important property that is known as to remove some impurities from water. Okay, now we are going to our second question. Name the substance which on treatment with chlorine would give you bleaching powder. That means the both questions are interconnected. So now you must tell me that whenever I'm reacting any compound with chlorine, it would give calcium oxychloride, and that compound is calcium hydroxide. In the last lecture we have calcium hydroxide को के साथ react कराते हैं, only then we can get our calcium chloride, only then we can get our bleaching powder. Okay, now let's move with our third question, that is name the sodium compound which is used for softening hard water. अभी अभी हमने इस टॉपिक को बहुत डिटेल में पढ़ा था कि हमारे हार्डनेस ऑफ वाटर क्या होता है. That is the water note from the lens. And the question is, हमें इतना बता दिया गया है कि there is one sodium compound, and this sodium compound is used for removing hardness of water. So we have studied. Tell me something about this. This is our washing soda, because in washing soda there is sodium carbonate. So this is our sodium compound which has sodium carbonate, and this contains 10 moles of water. Okay, so this is known as our washing soda, which is used for removing the hardness of water. Okay, now let's move with our two more questions. What would happen if the solution of sodium hydrocarbonate is heated? Give the equation of the reaction in water. Oh, super easy. We have just completed that. What would happen if we react our sodium hydrogen carbonate with heat? That whenever we are heating our sodium hydrocarbonate, what would happen? It would make sodium carbonate plus some carbon dioxide would be released, plus some water would be released. Please make sure that it is not a complete balanced reaction. So just make sure that make it balanced. Whenever we heat our sodium hydrogen carbonate, it would make sodium carbonate plus CO2 plus water, and this sodium carbonate is used for making our washing soda. Okay. Lastly, we're left with only one question. Write the equation to show the reaction between plaster of Paris and water. We have just completed. The plaster of Paris is calcium sulfate into half mole of water, and we are reacting it with water again. It would make the gypsum, calcium sulfate into 2 moles of water. So I can say that the water of crystallization process is reversible in nature. Whenever we want, we just heat it, water would be released. Whenever we want, just give it some water, just give it some moisture, and it would again be converted into gypsum. Okay. Now class, the plaster of Paris is very important for not only helping us in making our bone again, like the doctor use it, in the roofs also, and also it is used for making toys. Okay, so it is very important because it is very smooth and soft material which can be used for making toys. Okay, so this was all about this chapter, acid, base, and salt. We have completed this topic uh, totally. Now, if you have any kind of doubt or something regarding this topic, not only the salt, but also about acid and base, then please ask